This is appalling news. I'm Paul Shadow. It is an undeniable fact that former comedian John Oliver, who still inexplicably continues to ply his Last Week Tonight show on HBO, stopped being funny many years ago. Trump derangement syndrome sapped his humor along with his former Daily Show stablemate Stephen Colbert. Only 8 years ago, John could command 30 to 40 million views on YouTube. Now he's lucky to break 50,000. In a recent show, Oliver abused his viewers with a pro-Hamas screed and then followed that up with this defense of sausage danglers in frocks competing with girls and women in sports. As we like to say in the stand-up business, "Hey, John, read the room." John squeezed out the following from his pursed anus under his nose. Trump adds, "On that one issue, and it was frustrating to see the Harris campaign failed to formulate a response, especially because it's pretty easy to do so. Watch, I'll do it for you right now. As we've discussed before, there are vanishingly few trans girls competing in high schools anywhere, and even if there were, more trans kids, like all kids, vary in athletic ability, and there is no evidence they pose any threat to safety or fairness. It is very weird for you to be so focused on the subject, and finally, if you genuinely want to address the biggest concern for most girls who play high school sports, you'd be less worried about this and more about the creepy assistant volleyball coach who keeps liking their posts on Instagram." I can hear your uncontrollable laughter from here. We'd like to remind you that Last Week Tonight has 12 writers on staff, and it probably took all of them to add that expletive at the end of this fine comedic gem. Luckily for all of us, the bravest woman in the battle for gender sanity stepped into the ring. JK Rowling posted the following on X. "Nothing about this feels good, because John Oliver generously gave his time for my charity Lumos, and I liked him very much when I met him. But God knows, if you ever need an example of motivated reasoning and confirmation bias, this video's for you. An undoubtedly intelligent person spouts absolute bullshit to support something he wants to be true but isn't. According to the UN, female athletes have lost nearly 900 medals to trans-identified men competing against them in women's sporting categories. Girls have been ousted from teams to make way for boys. Women have suffered serious injury playing against trans-identified men. And again, I've come up against men who argue exactly what Oliver does here, using the very same talking points. With a straight face, the believe the science guys will say, "Actually, we don't yet have enough data to say whether men and boys are stronger and faster than women and girls." The Be Kind crew can't see what the issue is. Why are you bothered? It only affects a tiny minority of females. If you want to tell the world you're happy to watch females suffer injury, humiliation, and the loss of sporting opportunities to bolster an elitist postmodern ideology embraced by a minute fraction of the world's population, fair enough. You're allowed your opinion. But if you've just told girls they don't deserve fair sport, maybe rethink using all too real and common sexual predation against young women as a punchline for your edgy closing joke. Good for you, Joe. So when did John Oliver lose his testicles? Perhaps it was back in 2011 when his good buddy and fellow comedian Russell Howard, in an April 1st sketch show on BBC, had two airline attendants in makeup and women's clothes showing their male genitals to passengers. One passenger vomits at the sight. Pink News was suitably disgusted. Paris Lees, a spokeswoman for Transmedia Watch, said, "The BBC is now asking us to swallow the line that this segment was not about trans people. We're not sure that swallowing would have made the bit funnier. Did they go scared trans? Could this have galvanized these two comedians to abandon comedy altogether? Just look at some of these reviews of Howard's act. Beige comedy with nothing to say. Russell Howard, worst comedian out there. Why is Russell Howard allowed to call himself a comedian? Mock the weak. Russell Howard just is not funny." We found this hard to believe, so we found on YouTube 30 minutes of Russell Howard's best stand-up moments, comedy spotlight compilation, Jokes on Us. But after only 10 minutes, our stomach was threatening to let loose the dogs of dinner. To this reporter, it seems that Oliver has followed the same trajectory as his good British friend. Let us leave you with this final comment by Sarah Higdon. "I'm trans and a high-performing former athlete, including 7.5 years in the Army. Been on HRT for 5.5 years, and I can still prove that if I competed against women in sports, I still have an advantage. I was on path to prove it by breaking the female squat record until an old Army injury sidelined me. But I still perform in the 80th percentile on a spin bike after never riding before 2020. Which all goes to prove, as we say on Appalling News, men make the best women. This is Appalling News, and that's the way it is."